The only reason a lot of people see accredited only stamps on things is because the operator syndicator has decided that they are going to mass market out in the public. And therefore, per SEC law, when something is mass marketed like that, generally solicited is the real term, that the operator can only take in accredited investors. Where in fact, if you go and look up, all these deals, they're all documented in the EDGAR database on the SEC. The vast majority are 506B offerings, which only go out to a private network and therefore can accept a limited number of non-accredited investors. So investors always say, well, I can't find any deals for non-accredited investors. Well, dude, you're not in the network. You got to grow your network. You got to get away from broke people.
You're listening to the Rich State of Mind Show, the podcast made to make you the total package in the entrepreneurial world and give you what we call a rich state of mind. If you are here looking to learn about real estate investing, marketing, elevating your business, and developing your mindset to get to the next level, then you are at the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join our community on richstateofmind.com. Now here's your host, Anthony Ritchie.
Hey, Lane, thank you for taking the time for this early afternoon for you, even if for me, out in Hawaii. If you could please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so currently 6,000 rental properties owned, not working my engineering job anymore, full-time real estate syndicator and family office advisor. But, kind of started this back in 2009 with my first rental property, eventually did out-of-state rental properties, and kind of all by working the day job that I didn't really like as an engineer.
So a little bit, a little backstory. What got you into engineering, and then what about engineering you didn't like, which transitioned you into real estate investing?
Dude, I don't know what I got into engineering in the first place. Apparently I must have been good at like math and science when I was like 5 or 6. I don't know. I went to Kumon. I could count better than the rest of the other kids. And I kind of just rolled that momentum to graduating high school and could do some calculus classes, and just, engineers get paid the most without a higher level master's degree. So I think I Googled that at one point and I was like, yeah, least amount of work, decent amount of pay, sign me up. So that was eventually, I think, why I think I became an engineer eventually. And
then what about it you didn't like?
So I graduated. I was never a really good student too. I was more of like a 3.01% or GPA. I could never really design stuff as the more technical engineer. So I went to project management, right? Where you don't need to know about anything, just babysit other people. So my first job was working in construction, where I managed a mobile workforce crew. We just traveled all around the United States doing construction. And I kind of learned a bunch of management skills through that, just organizational skills. The engineering wasn't anything. But then I eventually, I was traveling around a lot and was saving a lot of money, right? I was really frugal, saved up at first 50 grand and then over $100,000 every single year just to put to buying real estate and rental properties for 5-7 years.
And so how did you get introduced to real estate?
I bought my first house to live in, and up until that point, just following that linear path that we're all told to do, right? Invest in your 401k, buy a house to live in, which I don't believe really in those two things for a lot of people starting out these days. I bought that house, and because I was traveling on the road all the time, I decided to rent it out, make some cash, right? I mean, they didn't have Turo back then. If not, I would have rented out my car too.
Yeah.
But then I was like, whoa, I'm making like $400 or $500 passive cash in a month. Shoot, let me do this again so I can quit this job that I don't like, fire my boss.
And so you said you started real estate investing in 2009, which I think was a great time to start, because I mean, anybody that bought anything back in those days when, a lot of people were probably scared to buy property or at least buy a primary home, that those homes have gone up in value, a crazy amount. So I think that was actually a really good time. I've heard a lot of good stories of people that got into real estate investing at that time for pennies on the dollar, and they stuck with it. Things really turned out for them. So you started out rent out your own spot, and then how we go all the way to now. Now we're talking about you in syndication, owning 6,000 units. What was that transition like?
Yeah, so I continue to buy another property in Seattle. This is in Seattle, right? Where, primary market where the rent to value ratios don't make sense. But in 2012, I finally learned that. It took me a few years to kind of learn that whole rent to value ratio thing. And at that point, I started to buy those turnkey rentals that you hear a lot about: Birmingham, Atlanta, Indianapolis. I think 5 in Atlanta, 4 in Birmingham, 1 in Pennsylvania, 1 in Indianapolis. Fast forward, I had 11 of those in 2015. And then I realized, it's good cash flow, right? You make a few $1,000s passive cash flow a month. We're, definitely on the path out of the rat race, I think. But then you start to realize that it's not a scalable way of investing. It's definitely not the way accredited investors invest. Anybody who is on the rampage to go buy multiple figures of turnkey rentals, when you own 11 rental properties, you have maybe an eviction or 2 every year, some kind of big catastrophe that happens every quarter, like a tree fall on the house or a flood in the basement. The property manager deals with all the nonsense for you, right? As we are passive investors, our highest and best uses are day jobs. But just for $3,000 passive a month, you're going to need a 3x that. You need 30 houses. So quickly realize that's not scalable, right? 3xing that exception rate is going to be more like an eviction every other month, some kind of big issue every couple of weeks. It's just not a scalable way of doing it. And that was where I kind of discovered and got around other high net worth accredited investors, realized that a lot of them invest in private placements and syndications, where the beauty of doing that is you're not on the hook for the loan, the debt's in the general partner's name, the key principals, the loan guarantors. Legal liability wise, you're not a managing member, and quite frankly, there's stronger deals. Value add, even if you're going after stabilized properties from the get-go.
And so you talked about, accredited investor. What is an accredited investor? If somebody is interested in doing something like this?
Yeah, accredited investor is somebody who makes $1 million or more, or has a net worth $1 million or more, supposedly not including your primary residence, or you make over $250,000 a year as a couple. Go check the SEC website for the exact thing.
SEC,
but
gotcha.
I think a lot of people, they don't realize that most deals, I would say 95% of them, you don't need to be accredited. The only reason a lot of people see accredited only stamps on things is because the operator syndicator has decided that they are going to mass market out in the public. And therefore, per SEC law, when something is mass marketed like that, generally solicited, is the real term, that the operator can only take in accredited investors. Where in fact, if you go and look up, all these deals, they're all documented in the EDGAR database on the SEC. The vast majority are 506B offerings, which only go out to a private network, and therefore can accept a limited number of non-accredited investors. So investors always say, well, I can't find any deals for non-accredited investors. Well, dude, you're not in the network. You got to grow your network. You got to get away from broke people.
That's a very blunt way of putting it, but it is actually realistic. I was just having a conversation where, in a lot of videos, you hear about how people say, paying for properties without your own money. And they'll always say, ask your mom, ask your dad, or ask your uncle, whatever. And I was, my issue was like, most of the people that I know, they don't have a family member where they can ask 10 grand for. Is probably somebody who is not even their friend, that if they, like the deal and it makes sense, they'll have the money to invest with them. And I think that's reality for most people in America, is probably because I always say this: the average income is 55K in America, and it's like 78% of people in America are living paycheck to paycheck. So this idea of, hey, just go ask your family, I don't think is really realistic. Or like you said, stop being around a lot of broke people. And if that means your family and friends and you have to change your circle, it's not a very vain reason. It's just that you're trying to open bigger doors for yourself, and you have to be around people that have that capital.
Right, right. I mean, I'm not a magician here, right? Like if you don't have basic financial literacy skills, you don't I mean, I would probably argue 95% of people out in this country, they spend more than they make, or they don't make more than 50, 60 grand a year to be able to accumulate larger sums of money in a reasonable amount of time. But a lot of folks, a lot of my clients, they make over 30, they save over 30 to 50, $100,000 every single year with multiple six-figure salaries. And I mean, percentage wise, it's a very small subset of the people out there, but there's a lot of people that make a lot of money because they went to college, they worked their butt off, good savers, and they just kind of misled down this road of marketable securities and retail investments where they just get killed with all these fees and invest in these 401ks and retirement accounts. With real estate investing, you need money to invest. If you don't have money, you can't invest. You got to go make money. And other than getting an engineering job that I don't like, I don't know how to make money other than that, right? But once you got some money, you got some seed capital, whether that's $30,000 to go buy a turnkey rental, or you're getting to be $250,000, $500,000 net worth, that's when really things start to pick up.
I agree, and I guess that for another episode, to address how to make that money, because I'm really big on realizing how much money you actually make and how far it can get you, and then what be honest with yourself and what sacrifices have to be made in order to meet that goal, to save 30, 40, 50 grand a year, so that you can kind of get your foot in a syndication. And so one of your chapters in your book, you talk about why syndications over burrs and turnkey rentals. Now, burr is definitely something that a lot of people really like right now. It is a faster way that I've seen people be able to scale and still have equity in deals and still have decent cash flow. But why do you say syndications over burrs and turkeys?
Well, I mean, this is coming from more of an accredited investor's perspective, right?
Okay.
I mean, burr property, you're exactly right. I mean, on paper, it looks like a great way to get a lot of free equity in deals. And it is, you're right, if everything goes well, and that's the big thing, right? What I don't like about, especially like the remote burrs, is, the people that you're working with, first of all, they are not grade A type of contractor level. They are some 2-box Tim with a truck, and likely their net worth is under $250,000, $500,000. They're going to screw you out of your 30, 35 grand on your little rehab in case if something goes wrong in their family. Right? And this is like one of the things I do is, like, whenever I partner up with somebody, I don't want to work with somebody less than $5 million net worth at this point, because a little bit of chump change here, there, few $100,000. I mean, it's a lot of money to them, right? I want to work with higher net worth people who know like the value of real relationships long term, and not going to sell me out for stealing my 30 grand. Goodness sake. And that's the problem when you're starting out, right? You're working with those little mom and pop contractors. When you're remote too, you have no recourse. Some people say, well, I'll send the third party inspector out there. I'm like, really? You're going to do that for all the little scopes of work you're going to be doing?
No.
I mean, I was a construction supervisor. This is what I did for work. We argued and negotiated scope, schedule, budget, and I still won't touch this stuff with a 10-foot pole. But it's a way that you want to put in more sweat equity or take on more risks. Yes, it will get you there faster. But where I'm making the distinction is, if you make more than $60,000, maybe $70,000 a year, and you probably are past that tipping point where it's like, hey man, your highest and best use is at your day job. Go focus there and go make money more there, because that's going to be probably your best bet to get out of the sub $1 million net worth category. And then once you're above $1 million net worth, heck, even if you're above $500,000 net worth, I just don't think the risk of doing a burr is worth it.
So a couple of things you mentioned: money, the value of money over relationship, and we've talked a lot about on my podcast about how you can get screwed over by a contractor, but we never mentioned that particular thing, valuing a relationship and continuous business or reputation, if that's what you value, over taking that $30,000 and running away and having that risk. And so there was I was on somebody else's podcast, and I told them about how they could do a conventional loan, like a conventional renovation loan, and how the contractor has to get inspected per phase. So there's like 4 different phases. They have to get inspected per one. I call it like the burr on training wheels, because especially for somebody that's new to investing or trying to do their first burr, because I don't want anybody to get into their first burr and it's like there's no buffer. It's just you and the contractor. And if he skates off and you know what the new contract is going to say, hey, I got to rip everything out. We got to do it all from scratch. Because you do run that risk. And I completely understand your perspective. And I don't know how these contractors keep finding business. If they keep just doing this to people in this particular area, just, doing a half-ass job on each project or leaving,
Well, there's a sucker
project.
born every day, right? I mean, look at turnkey
true.
rentals. They, if you're been doing this for more than a couple of years, you don't buy turnkey rentals, just overpriced pieces of junk that go to like the new sucker that, listens to a podcast, driving home from work in Hawaii, Seattle, California, has no access to no cash flow. I mean, there's always a sucker born every day for that, that entry level real estate investor stuff. And apparently these guys, they can make a living off this stuff, these contracts.
Yeah, because so the dream is to be where you're at, right? But it's the in-between path that is not as broken down as much, which hence the reason why, webinars, podcasts, books. So everybody's just trying to figure out an in. If I don't make 80, 90 grand and I don't see a way to where I can get in and put down 25% down on a house, but I could put down 3.5 in house hack or something, or like you said, that turnkey that feels safe because there's nothing else to fix because I'm scared of what's going to happen. I always say these contractor stories. Then I think it kind of gets muddied at that level, and then you do end up having such a small network of individuals that kind of get past that point to the position that you're in today. And I would say too, you kind of I feel like we get a lot of misdirection. We have, because everybody has their own opinion what's worked for them. And then, so you have your opinion what's worked for them, but then you also have the numbers. So if you ask one guy down the street, they'll say, hey, the burr was the best thing that's ever happened to me, right? And then the syndicator would be like, hey, this is the best thing that I've seen at work. Personally, I would say I would have to lean with you. And as I look at things, being either a private lender to me or a syndicator looks like the best option because of this, how fast you can scale. And then at the same time, you are minimizing your risk, I feel like, because let's say I can replace my income for just having 10 rentals, right? Usually that's what they say. Hey, if you just have 10 rentals, you can replace your income and you can leave your job. God forbid if out of those 10 rentals, 2 or 3 go down, let's say because of COVID, now my income I'm highly affected. But when it comes to the syndication portion, you have 6,000 rentals. If say 100 of them go down, you're not still worrying about your cash flow to the point where you have to change your lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's got their own opinion, right? And there's a lot of self-selecting survivorship biases, right? Like the guys, you never hear about all the suckers that got their money stolen from some deadbeat contractor trying to do the remote burr and they don't know what the heck they're doing. You never hear about those kinds of guys, but I mean, I'll just speak for myself. I mean, I started in 2009, just saving up $50,000 to $100,000 a year, just bought one rental after another. And then it took me 6 years to get up to 11 rental properties.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was really boring. It took a lot of time. I didn't do any burrs. I just bought it retail and turnkey. I think I probably saved a heck of a lot more than the average bearer out there. But if you're like saving 30 grand a year, well, it's just going to take a little bit longer. No, you have to ask yourself, like, should I gamble and get there in 4 years, or should I just do like Lane says and just do it in 6? Take a little bit longer.
How much would you say, it took for you to be do your first syndication as you as the operator?
I mean, I went in as a passive first.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I think that's a great way to kind of at least learn. But I mean, it doesn't make sense to be an operator unless you have a lot of people that already trust you and to kind of go into deals on your own. Like, people don't realize. I mean, the first 5, 6 deals, I mean, when it cashed out, I mean, I don't feel like I made any money. It wasn't even worth it, to be honest. I mean, of course, it's all later, right? But I mean, I look at all the people who kind of started this when I did. I mean, they're all not around. I would say the success rate of a budding syndicator is like 3%.
Why is that?
I think the biggest barrier is deal flow, right? So brokers' motivation is, can these suckers close this deal, right? Have they closed the deal before? Likely no, right? So that's your biggest barrier. And what it normally takes people 2 years of just kissing butt and visiting properties. So like if you live in California, you think you're gonna go buy a Texas property, it ain't gonna happen, dude.
How come?
It ain't gonna happen because the brokers know that you haven't even visited the property. They know you're just a sucker. And if that's the case, they're just selling it to you as the sucker, right? You're not going to get the good deals that are actually going to work, is what I'm saying. The 1 in 1,000 deals. If you're getting deal flow, you're probably that sucker who's getting the sucker deals. The 999 out of 1,000.
Gotcha.
So I mean, good for you guys. I mean, we just sold some properties and we got like 20 something offers, and it's all these suckers from California that don't know what the heck they're doing.
But I mean, you got to sell, so
yeah. I mean, we love to sell to the guys like that, right? There's a sucker born every day for this type of stuff.
So, because I always hear of the exodus of, well, mostly I hear about California, where hey, look, I'm not trying to buy $1 million duplex in Cali, but for $1 million, I could probably buy me a 32plex in Missouri. You don't advise against people doing that, using their money in a higher income area to buy in a cheaper area?
That's fine, but I wouldn't buy those deals, right? Everyone's got different standards, right? In many things. I mean, it's just like, I just don't see those deals working, period. Like, I don't know how they make them work. I mean, maybe they're just, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all real estate, right? Real estate typically goes up in price and it holds its value. So from that perspective, if you just want to buy something just to minimally barely cash flow and take your tax benefits and your losses, then cool, right? I mean, real estate will do that for you, but I don't think you're going to get much returns in most of the deals that are out there, especially that are going to be the sucker deals that goes to the newbie buyers, right? For you to get like the real gems, you're going to have to be in it for about a couple of years, spend hours doing this, and or eventually quit your day job doing it. But very little people have the cojones to quit their day job and go into this full time, and that's what the brokers really want to see.
Gotcha. So they're looking for somebody that's committed.
Yeah, and that's the first barrier, right? I think that's the biggest barrier. The second big barrier is like, well, you find a good deal, something drops in your lap, it ain't gonna happen, right? But say it does, right? You know, people run through brick walls somehow. I don't know how they do it, right? It's a brick wall. But the next thing is, well, how are you going to qualify with the debt, right? Because to get all these loans, you need, prior experience doing this. You're going to need somebody on your key principal team to co-sign your debt. I don't know what kind of person out there is just going to sign on some random person's thing and putting all their net worth on the line.
When
so
they
that's
have
another. That's another. Well, if the person has nothing to lose, they can't qualify for the debt anyway, right? Because you need to qualify for net worth, liquidity, and experience, right? So you could probably, liquidity is not the hardest thing. That's kind of easy. But the hardest thing is, well, the net worth, right? If you're going out and you're buying a $20 million building, if your net worth is $1 million, well, you need a $19 million guy to sign up on next to you, right? And that guy needs to have experience investing in real estate. And if he's experienced, dude, he's not going to co-sign your loan, right?
Yeah. That's a good friend if it is.
Yeah. But then you're going to need the guy with experience to sign on with you too. satisfy for that experience component. So that's big issue number 2 here.
Okay. And so you mentioned about people having the cojones to quit their job. In your chapter 6 of your book, you talk about just before I quit my day job. Are you saying that there are certain prerequisites that need to be taken care of before, or what milestones need to be hit before you quit your day job?
Well, I mean, we're talking about 2 different people, right? Like I work with more passive investors, right? Guys who are not going to go down the road. I mean, most of the guys I work with might own several rental properties, and they realize they need to leave the work to the professionals, right? Their highest and best use is being a doctor, high paid engineer, working professional, making 6 figures, right? Then to jump off that bandwagon and start up from the bottom in a much more competitive environment. I'm not a big fan of college education, but the college education thing is a big barrier to entry. Not many people have it. And if you have a college education in the right field, in the right degree, it can be the easy ticket to a pretty decent paying salary and then to transition to different jobs that you choose. But when you get off of that gravy train, I mean, it's the wild, wild west out there. I mean, it's people who don't have college degrees, it's competition's fierce, right? And that's why essentially why pay is lower for non-college grads.
Yeah, statistically, yeah.
It's not that they're smarter. I don't believe that really, but it's just there's more fierce competition.
No, yeah, you're right, especially statistically, and like you said too, like you were talking about how you didn't really care for school. And so some people are not able to really push past that. I've noticed, like, you have some very smart people that's just like, I don't like it to the point where I'm not even trying to go to college. I'll do something else. And I like the fact that you also emphasize on, yes, college degree in a particular field, because just because you have a college degree does not equate to you making, certain amount of money. Because I remember, I don't know, how old are you?
35 or
okay
6.
So yeah, you're old enough to where you may have remembered, or probably maybe a generation before you, where it was either you go in the military or you go to college. If you don't do those things, then it's like, what are you doing? But now I've seen it to where it is definitely, I think, a lot more complicated than that. There's different ways of being able to have access to money, unless doctor, lawyer, engineer like yourself, tech. In the tech fields, obviously, in today's time, those are definitely growing. But so I wanted to also speak on, you said you start off as passive, right? And I believe the term is LP.
That's correct. Limited partner.
So what did you learn when you became the LP?
I learned a lot of perspective.
Okay.
When I'm sitting here in the seat of an LP, there are questions I'm asking that has really helped me today kind of understand what the questions that a lot of new time investors will ask, right? A lot of jittery questions. And with me having the experience of being there, I can empathize with that. But you don't really learn too much of what's going on behind the curtain as an LP, but it's a start.
I mean, and I'm asking because a lot of people I've talked to, they're like, hey, if you want to kind of get your foot in the door, start off as an LP, and then, ask, if the operator has time, definitely, hey, ask them, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? Because obviously there's a lot of moving parts, so that eventually, once you build up your, like you said, your liquidity and your net worth, you'll be able to do that as well. Would you say that people that are LPs are able to amass, like you can become a millionaire off of being an LP consistently?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the time when I started to invest, I think I was not an accredited investor yet. But I was like, well, if I can just hit 13, 14% IR and continue to perform at my day job and save $30,000 to $50,000 a year, rentals on top of that too, I mean, I'll be able to quit my day job well before I'm 40 years old, was my thought
Awesome.
process. So, and that's why I initially went down the LP route, because I saw people dropping like flies. And like I said, the 97% failure rate. of people who spend a boatload of money on guru multifamily training. I'll tell you how to do it. Just go out there and, go on the graveyard for deals. You don't find deals there, but you find brokers out there that are desperate, right? You're not going to get to the high tier brokers. You just got to get lucky that one of these brokers has something falls in their lap. You happen to be the person top of mind, and it's going to take 2 years to do that, right? That's essentially what they teach you in this stuff. It's kind of easy, and there's no other way to do it, but you just got to get lucky, right? But it's like I said, it ain't going to happen statistically. But that's all it is to it,
So speaking of, building net worth and becoming a millionaire, you talk about how white knuckling it to 1 million is not the path to financial freedom. So what do you mean by that?
I think so the term white knuckling is the whole like frugality thing, right? Like not buying your Starbucks, the $5 latte trick. I did that initially in my 20s, right? I mean, that's how I was able to save so much money for like half a decade, and that got me to accredited investor status. But that mindset can be very debilitating. This is what we kind of teach folks in our passive investor mastermind, right? Like it's a very scarcity mindset. It's not a happy way of living, but more importantly, it repels abundance mindset partners and peers around you, where you just don't build real relationships with people. Everybody knows. It's kind of like the desperate guy. You can smell that guy coming on a mile away. Everybody knows the scarcity minded person who's coupon in or kind of slow to pick up the bill, that kind of nonsense. Or the person who's like, just very stingy with their money or very like tight with their investment. At some point, you got to kind of loosen up. You have to trust people. And then it's part of being like, now as an accredited investor, I'll hop into some deals as a passive investor and I don't even look at the pitch deck. I just meet the person and I'm like, look, man, you and I have just met. I've heard some good things about you per my network that I've cultivated over the years. Hey man, this is a bet with you, right? Make me happy and we'll do some more business together. If not, hey, shame on me.
Okay. And so as a passive investor, what are you looking at to make you feel like, hey, this is a good deal? It's a good syndication.
Well, I mean, I cheat, right? Like I'm an operator, so I know how to underwrite the deals myself, and I know how to all the tricks and games that are on the pitch deck. So I mean, I kind of know. But if I didn't know how to do this, I would go to my network. I would only invest with people that I know. I know people that I have close relationships, have invested 50 grand with the person in the past and has had a good experience.
Fair enough. And I think that's probably a realistic advice, is to probably reference.
It's good, but it's not practical, right? Because when I started this, like, I don't know anybody who, my parents weren't accredited. I wasn't accredited. I don't have friends that are accredited investors, for goodness sakes, right? Like, this is where like the leap of faith happens. Unless at some point you're going to have to take the leap of faith to get something on your track record so that other accredited investors actually want to interact with you.
Yeah, this is
nobody
true.
wants to talk to, even if you are rich. Look, we're all rich. Doesn't matter. If you're not putting skin in the game, people aren't going to take you seriously, and like, you're not really adding to the interaction, adding value, and people won't want to hang out with you.
Interesting. But I think that's realistic, though. You have to at some point loosen that purse up and start trusting these individuals. I think, and you mentioned it early in this podcast, at that level, I would like to think that people are not trying to screw each other over when it comes to millions of dollars, because you could very well have 70 LPs you're dealing with. You really gonna run away with $4 million and never be. Yeah. You don't think that's gonna mess you up in this small community?
Yeah, but in little burrs where it's some dinky JV document, heck yeah, it happens all the time, right?
So I understand what you mean. Definitely the higher the deal, the more professional your circle is, or the people that you have to rely on are.
Right. And people can have different criteria. Me personally, I'm very discriminatory. I want to see a professional pedigree. I want to see the college degrees. I want to see years of experience leading others in a professional nature. and I don't need to have like suits and that type of stuff, but I want to see like transparency, and I want a certain level of professionalism when I put my hard-earned money into something with somebody.
Okay. And so we're speaking of perspective. So you also talk about why people that are bad with their money are the only ones who should own their primary residence. So what do you mean by that? Are you saying like people that are good, have great financial literacy should be renting and not owning primary homes?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's paradigms for everything, right? So most people are really bad with their money, and a home is sort of like a forced piggy bank. They have to pay that mortgage, and yeah, it goes up with the pace of inflation, but it's better than the alternative that likely is going to happen. That they'll take that extra $1,000 of free cash flow and go blow it on jet skis or who knows what, right? Whereas maybe 5% of the population is like this, that are good savers. A lot of people I work with, they're the people who maxed out their 401ks in their younger days. Those guys should probably go on the offense and start to acquire rental properties or get into deals and kind of live on the other side of this. I mean, I still rent.
You rent yourself?
Yeah, I rent. I just do it. I mean, I just do it to inspire the young guys too,
Would you say, I guess, it's less stressful? Like, hey, like I'm renting, I don't really have to worry about repairs and
yeah, sure, but like the
tax.
numbers tell you what to do, right? Like, I mean, here in Hawaii, I mean, starter houses cost 700 grand. I mean, if you're gonna put down a 20% down payment, that's like $140. You could go buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses with that, creating like 1,500 of just cash flow, not including mortgage pay down, appreciation, tax benefits. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Like you go buy those 5 houses if you're starting out. If you're a credit investor, you don't want to own 5 houses, pain in the butt. But essentially you take the money, invest it, don't just sink it in your house.
It makes sense. And so at this point where you're at now, because I want to make sure I ask this question. So at this point where you're at right now, how are you managing this many units?
Professional third-party property management. We hire good college-educated people with lots of years of experience to run it better than I ever could.
And so yeah, and it's great that you recognize. You mentioned earlier about hiring professionals, understanding. Hey, I may have a concept of how to do this, but these people do this for a living, and they have a particular set of skills to make sure that they do it correctly and professionally.
And this is where like I differ a lot from a lot of people. Some people are like, well, you got to find people who are passionate. Like, no, I don't want those people because they come from some other, like random field. Like I want the people who operated, worked for 40, 50 grand as a property manager for half a decade, that stepped into a manager role, maybe made their own property management company. These are the people that the large institutional companies hire, right?
That makes sense. You want people that have pipelined their way to that point.
Right. They have the pedigree, right, to do that type of work.
I like that. And no, and it's not, I want to say discriminatory. I think you're doing good business because you're making sure that you're being a good steward of your assets to ensure it's in the best hands. And I think you have a right to do so when you've amassed this amount of properties and units. I think you're doing your due diligence. I don't think anybody should ever feel like, no, day-to-day property manager, I'm not going to give you your big break and have you manage 1,500 properties units for me.
Or Mr. Engineer who's tired of your day job. Yeah, sure, you can go run these units for us. Like, no, none of those. It's just like if I came into, a person, I don't know where person's working now, right? Like maybe you're a pharmacist, right? If I just walked on in there and started to making drugs, you'd probably tell me to get the heck out of here, right? It's no different, right? And yet people think that because they like owned a rental property, now they can just go run an apartment complex or something like that. Like, I mean, yeah, you can do that, but there's people that were bred for this. Yes. They went to institutions and Like they've learned skill sets, they built companies. I mean, those are the people that should be at the wheel, especially when other people's money is at stake.
No, yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And so I like this episode because you've been pretty frank on what type of professionalism you expect. And a lot of times I think we defer to maybe those cheaper options because they are cheaper, but we do end up paying more sometimes on the back end. Actually, a lot of times on the back end. So I don't mind paying. And a good example I had was I had a contract. I needed new water heaters for my triplex, and I had a mom and pop place that was willing to do it for $4,800. They wanted me to pay 50% up front, and no, they actually wanted me to pay 80% up front, and that's when I started trying to knock them down to 50. But I had this other company called Michael and Son, who's a big business, multiple people I could call on the phone if something goes bad, and they were going to charge me $10,000 for those water heaters to be properly done with the warranty, which, by the way, they've come out like 3 times this week and I haven't had to pay a dime because of that warranty. So I went with the big business because I wanted to have more than one person to call, and I didn't have to pay until after the work was done. Actually, I had to pay 25% down, and then I paid the 75% after the work was done and inspected. And then the city inspected it as well. And so I haven't had a problem since, because, and water heaters, as you know, are very expensive. So I paid an extra $5,000 for the work, but I know I got quality work that I do not have to worry about for years down the road. Because like I mentioned earlier, I could have got mom and pop to do it. Let's say an issue was done wrong, and then later on I actually get the professional business. They're like, hey, look, they did this all wrong underneath the house. It's going to cost you another $5,000-6,000 to get it done the right way.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, you pick and choose, right? I mean, I was there at one time. In that situation, if it's a mom and pop little rental property like that, what I would do is I would get the big guys price and I would chop it in half and go play hardball with the small guys. And probably they might bend and I'd go with them. But like when you go to bigger assets, like, I mean, now we're kind of developing properties. Like what I like about it is we have the budget to get things done right with the professionals, like even like architects, engineers, like construction management. I mean, I used to do construction management. Now I get to hire these suckers, be the owner, right? I know the level of sophistication of the org structure. I have great trust in those types of people, but you need the budget to be able to do it. It's no different than like, the extreme example is very typical. Your mom and pop investor would never just landlord it all themselves, right? And I'm on this spectrum where we're paying professionals to do everything. When you're a mom and pop landlord, and this is how everybody starts out, especially when your net worth is under $1 million, we're kind of in the middle.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. And so I want to thank you for providing this perspective on syndication and on real investing, period. I think some people, this will definitely appeal to individuals that can, deal with situations like this very straight and, I would say, transparent. Because like you mentioned, I think when it comes to the commercialization of real estate investing and how it has changed people's lives, a lot of the pitfalls and realistic I say scales are not put out there the way they should, especially once you get into it. And if you you could easily get discouraged when you get into it, like, yo, this is bullcrap. Like, this is not, I was not told all these things in whatever book was written or whatever vlog. And I think you also get kind of punched in the face as far as how far your money really goes. You're like, you know what, 25,000 really doesn't do much for me, as much as I thought I could to get in this game, this real estate game. I need to figure out other ways to amass, and if it may take years, then that's fine. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask though, and we always make sure we ask everybody this. So what is your rich state of mind? What is your big why as to why you scaled up to this high in your real estate journey?
So when I first started my podcast, we taught people how to buy little turnkey rentals.
Mm-hmm.
And the joke was, like, my friend would always say, well, what the hell are you talking about? It's a freaking turnkey rental. 2 podcasts done, repeat things a couple times at the end. I mean, the truth is like there's nothing turnkey about turnkey rentals in itself, right? And like you said, there's some nuances to all this stuff, and it's not for everybody. If everybody just went out there and bought a handful of rental properties, they probably cut the timeline to financial freedom in half. Where most people never get there. Financial independence is not for everybody, but if you're willing to get out of your comfort zone, keep on it, I mean, you'll get there. So today, I mean, now it's just about reaching more people, right? Like not everybody's going to buy a rental property, but the syndication deals a lot less headache, no management duties. You need more money, but it opens up a lot more doors for those types of people with money to get more in these grassroots type of projects. So I've seen how it changes people. I mean, after a while, as a credit investor, it's not really about the investing. Just invest in people that don't steal your money. It's more about the tax, the legal, the infinite banking. It's just simple things that can easily taught there, but unfortunately very counterintuitive that we're all taught out there in mainstream financial education. Quite frankly, there is no financial education being taught about any of this stuff. So, but yeah, a lot of hardworking people that are just kind of led down the wrong path.
And have the money to actually make a difference in their financial future too.
Yeah, and the goal is, let's get them to $4 or $5 million net worth, which is typically the range where you're good, fly first class wherever you want. But some at that point, people, money magnifies people. If you're cheap and you're super scarcity minded, when you have $4 or $5 million, heck, when you have $20 million, you're going to be the same person. But what I notice a lot of people, like working with a lot of people, once they have that number, that they get their oxygen mask on, they start thinking about other people other than themselves, and they start doing shit to help out other people, and that's what it's all about. Maybe that's why I started to do this stuff. I mean, I'm not going to go build houses for Habitat for Humanity. I don't know how to build anything. And to me, that's not playing with leverage, right? Like for me, if I can empower other people to kind of get their own stuff together, get FI, and then empower them whatever they want to do, right? Hopefully it's something good.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate your time. This has been a different take on syndication. I think you actually have the biggest portfolio of individuals that I've talked to. Usually people have talked to like 2,500, 1,500, 3,000. And so I think this has been pretty raw, pretty real. And I'll definitely, I want to make sure, how can people contact you? Because I want people to find, whenever you do your next deal, I want people to find you if you need any LPs.
They can check out simplepassivecashflow.com and the podcast, Simple Passive Cash Flow, Passive Real Estate Investing. I think it's what it's called.
Simplepassivecashflow.com. Yeah, join our tribe. I see it on the on the screen. All right. And you have a Facebook group?
No, I try to stay off Facebook stuff these days. Yeah.
LinkedIn
credit investors don't hang out on social media. I don't have time for that. So
Good to know. Well, all right, man. I appreciate your time, man. It's been awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you for sticking with us from the start of the episode. Please share our show with friends and family, visit our YouTube channel, and view more of our content on richstateofmind.com. See you next week on the Rich State of Mind Show.